Okay, let's jump right in. Picture this. You're stepping into a high-stakes workplace meeting right here in Thailand. The tension is palpable, the agenda is completely packed, and every single person around that boardroom table is communicating constantly. But here's the crazy part. They're communicating heavily even when their mouths are completely shut. Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're going to master the micro moments of workplace communication. We'll be breaking down exactly what is being said out loud, and more importantly, what's happening in the quiet spaces in between. Okay, let's dive into this with a statistic from our source material that should honestly terrify anyone who leads a team or runs a meeting. 75%. That is the amount of a spoken message that business people generally forget after just a few days. I mean, really think about that. You spend hours preparing this brilliant pitch you delivered absolutely perfectly, and by Friday, 3/4 of it has just vanished from your colleagues' minds. That establishes a massive fundamental communication problem that we urgently need to solve.
So that right there is the communication trap. And figuring out how to escape that massive memory drop-off is exactly what we're doing today.
Now, what's really interesting about how our source material tackles this is how it neatly divides our entire communication toolkit into two distinct halves. On the left side, you've got your verbal toolkit. That's your spoken and written words. But on the right side, you've got the nonverbal toolkit, your signs, your expressions, your gestures. And honestly, this basic split is basically our roadmap for surviving any high-stakes meeting scenario.
Let's start by looking at how we actually use language at work, laying down that verbal foundation first.
Building on that foundation, the text draws a really brilliant contrast. Think about written communication, your meeting agendas, memos, complex reports. They take time, preparation, and money, right? But they guarantee accuracy for the complex stuff. Oral communication, though, that relies entirely on the live, high-wire act of speaking and listening. Giving instructions, active listening, it's all happening in real time. And remember that trap we literally just talked about? Listening is precisely where that 75% drop-off happens. We spend so much time listening in business, yet we retain so little of the actual words.
Which naturally brings us to what happens when we aren't speaking. Let's look at body language in meetings and those incredibly powerful unspoken dynamics.
Diving into the unspoken stuff, our source material uses a truly striking phrase. It actually calls nonverbal communication God-made language. I love that framing. It really highlights how signs, facial expressions, and physical gestures just naturally bypass our constructed vocabularies altogether. You don't need to consult a dictionary to understand a frown or a smile, do you? It's deeply instinctual and incredibly powerful.
Let's look at a really specific micro moment from the text. Picture a colleague sitting across the table while you're pitching an idea. If they physically lean forward toward you, their posture instantly communicates engagement. Without uttering a single syllable, their body language is practically screaming, "I am with you, keep going."
And this perfectly illustrates the exact opposite end of the spectrum. Contrast that highly engaged leaning posture with someone repeatedly checking their watch or staring at their phone. The text points out that this is an undeniable, super loud, nonverbal sign of a bored audience. As a speaker, if you see this happening, you already know your message is failing long before the meeting is even over.
But, it's not just about what our bodies are doing in the heat of the moment. The text defines appearance as a massive communicator too. And yes, obviously that means the presenter's personal clothing and neatness, which instantly signal job status and professionalism. But crucially, and people forget this all the time, it also includes the surroundings. The room size, the furnishings, the lighting of the meeting space. They are already communicating a tone and an atmosphere before anyone even clears their throat to speak.
And here's a fascinating, kind of wild detail from the source. Smell communicates powerfully. The text gives the rather extreme example that a bad smell, like an oil or gas leak, immediately communicates danger. Like obviously you'd end the meeting and run. But on a day-to-day regular office level, the perfume or cologne worn by a colleague in a tight, enclosed boardroom conveys emotions and feelings far faster than spoken or written words ever could.
Now let's explore some of the most invisible power dynamics in the room. I'm talking about silence and time.
It's a huge mistake to think of silence in a meeting as just empty air. According to the text, silence is an incredibly effective medium all on its own. A heavy pause can express deeply serious emotions. Or maybe you've actually seen this happen. A direct question is asked about a project failure, and the person responsible just stays quiet. That silence itself is often an unspoken admission of a mistake. Silence confirms statements without you ever having to say a word.
Time is absolutely sending a message too.
The source contrasts two really fascinating uses of time. On one hand, making someone wait for a long time might oddly indicate deep interest or even love according to the text, like showing they are totally worth the wait. But let's look at the business context. Dropping a meeting invite on a colleague's calendar with extremely short notice, that screams one message loud and clear: urgency. How we manage time is literally how we manage meaning.
And then there's the space between the words, what the text calls paralanguage. This is all about your style of speaking, your volume, your intonation. Imagine a team member walking into the meeting room 20 minutes late. You look right at them and say, "Wow, how prompt you are." The words themselves are technically a compliment, but the intonation, that heavy theatrical sarcasm, it completely flips the meaning into harsh criticism. The voice carries the truth, not the vocabulary.
So how do we adapt to our audience and actually overcome all that memory loss we talked about?
To ensure your message actually survives that massive 75% drop-off, the source provides this really solid mental checklist for adaptation. It breaks down into language, style, and format. First, language. You've got to adapt it to the person receiving it, but it still needs to feel natural to you. Second, style. Are you pitching to the CEO where you need a highly formal, complex style, or are you just rallying your close team with a simple, informal tone? And finally, format. You have to choose the right medium based on what you're actually trying to achieve. Hitting these 3 points means your message perfectly aligns with how your specific audience actually absorbs information.
Which brings us to the big takeaway. We know that the words you carefully type into an agenda or speak out loud are incredibly fleeting. The vast majority of them will disappear from your colleagues' minds by next week. So, I want to leave you with this question to chew on before your next big meeting. If your team is going to forget 75% of your actual words, what will your body language, your tone, and your preparation make them remember? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and good luck navigating your next workplace meeting.